Okay, welcome to another edition of Real Estate Investor Talk. I'm sitting here in Rivonia, Johannesburg, at Twine & Country's offices, and sitting with me is our master investor, Linda Erasmus, who heads up Twine & Country South Africa. We just had a long interview, a very interesting discussion. And first of all, I just want to say, Linda, very warm welcome to Real Estate Investor Talk. Linda, we've had a long discussion, and we discussed in particular where you started off in real estate, first of all, from an estate agent perspective, but we also discussed your sort of investment journey and how you invested in property. Do you want to maybe just give us some highlights of that, of what we discussed now, of where you started investing in property and how you got into property as an estate agent?
Yeah, Neale, I think the first thing that comes to mind is, our own property, our family property that we bought. And, the first step is always to take your little savings and pay off your family home. And it's once you've done that, you've empowered yourself to actually go to the next step and start looking a little bit further afield. And, like all other families, we're just a normal South African family. The next step was to invest in that holiday home. But luckily, our holiday home never became just a place that was so far away and that we couldn't use it for something else. So we ended up in buying our holiday home, rented it out permanently for about 3 or 4 years, and then we turned it into a little guest house. And as the kids grew up, sometimes they went and they ran the guest house, and we finally got somebody to run it for us. But the guest house paid for the property, and all in all, it was a good investment.
Okay, so we saw that you got into the guest house. I know you also bought a commercial property as well, in particular your offices, because this is where your business and your investment sort of journey sort of came together. Tell us a little bit about that story, because I found that also very interesting, how that evolved.
Here in 1997, 98, around there, I was sitting in a huge building, and our rental agreement came to an end, and I thought, I wonder if I want to pay the landlord all this money for another 5 years. So I called my team in, obviously real estate agents, and I said, I believe that our office should be on this busy road. And I sent the team out, and they came back and they said they couldn't find anything that we can buy a property. But one gentleman came back and said, I found a piece of land, commercial rights. So we ended up building our office, which also, over the years turned out to be a very good investment and a very good move that I've made at that point of time.
Okay, so for people out there who are wanting to invest for the first time, that sounds very easy. Is it easy? Is it difficult? Tell us a little bit, give us some direction for them. You've been in the business, you deal with a lot of people, and your offices, your franchises deal with a lot of people out there. What kind of advice would you give out now? We know the market is tough and all that kind of stuff, but property is still a good investment. Give us a little bit of a sort of a feeling of tips out there for the readers there, which they can use.
Neale, a couple of years, one of the banks, and I must maybe just mention that, brought this buy-to-let concept in. And when I saw it, I saw trouble. Because, to buy a property only to go and let it, and what's going to happen if it's standing empty for a couple of months, can the landlord afford the bond, all those things. And I think there's a lot of answers to that if you look at how many people burnt their fingers. So when it comes to that, it brings me to the very basic of investing in property. To just go out there blindly and think, I'm going to make a property investment because a tenant is going to do the repayments for me. That is a recipe for a disaster. So you always have to look at, if all else fails and there's no money coming in, can I afford to pay that bond? Because the basis is that if you can't afford the bond repayment, then you can't have the property and the bank will repossess the property. And I think that is one of the reasons why we're sitting with so many distressed sellers at this point of time. So the first, and I can almost say foremost principle in investing is that you've got to understand, if you go and borrow money to go and invest, then you've got to make sure that you can afford that repayment. If for one or other reason somebody else cannot make the payment on your behalf.
Right. So, okay, so somebody's in the current market, it's quite difficult. If you reckon if there's no money out there, don't invest.
Look, you've got to, your best investors are people. If I take myself, for example, I started in real estate, so some months I always had a husband looking after me. Mm-hmm. So as a wife, my money was like extra money. So we had extra money that we could say, if I had a good year, we've got some extra money we pay off our property. If I was just like a salary earner, it might have been a lot more difficult for us. But I'm sure we would have been able to pay our first home off and then go into buying probably a second home. So you've got to look at your personal circumstances. Everybody cannot do the same thing. I don't invest in huge money markets because I don't think I'm the right player for that. And I think it is important that you understand what type of investment will fit your personal